on that camera and strap in. It's time for another episode of TOGCHAT Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news and tips, along with your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, good Wednesday evening. Thanks for joining me for episode number 211 of TOGCHAT Live. Hey, I hope you're all healthy and safe, and of course, practicing your social distancing. I've got photographers tuning in from all over the world right now, so please be sure to check in, leave a comment, let me know you're here and where you are watching from. And we've got Renee from Switzerland and Kevin down in Round Rock, Texas. And I've got, let's see here, Danny in Las Vegas and Alan from Denmark and Guy from Tucson. And let's see here, who did I see? We got Anthony from North Carolina and my favorite sign-in of the night, Don from Yakima, a Pentaxian. Good for owning that, Don. Good for owning that. Anyway, it's always cool to see people from all around the world tuning in the chat about their love of photography. And of course, hey, hit that share button. You're right down there. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Of course, you can always share that link, tog.chat/live. I just put it in the chat window for you. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out, so please let your folks know. So how can I help you tonight? What can I tell you about? What can I share with you to help you improve your photography? Start posting your questions, and of course, I'll do my best to answer them all in the next 60 minutes. And remember, this is a gear-free zone. I will discuss anything having to do with the hows and whys behind creating great images and marketing yourself. That can, of course, include gear if it's a question about how to do something. Please don't ask me what your next camera should be. In fact, don't listen to anyone on YouTube about a decision like that. So, before we begin, this week in photo news. It's been a busy week, as usual, in the photography world. The big headline news is that Sony didn't announce a new camera this week. And Canon? Canon insists that there is no shipping delay with the new EOS R5 due to the overheating problems. I think probably they figure that winter is right around the corner, and that of course will offset the temperature issues as long as you shoot your video outside. Olympus did announce a new camera and a very cool lens yesterday. You may have seen my video on the new OMD EM10 Mark IV, which is the newest upgrade in the Olympus OMD lineup. Now this model is the entry-level camera in the group, but I gotta tell you, it's a ton of fun to shoot with. All four OMD models share the same sensor now, and this entry-level camera has many of the pro-level features and specs in a tiny camera at an entry-level price. You can check out all the details in my video. The link is down in the description below. Now even cooler news, Olympus announced a new 100 to 400 millimeter variable aperture zoom with a price tag of just $1,500. Now that's a 200 to 800 millimeter, 35 millimeter equivalent focal length. It weighs only 2.5 pounds. This lens can also be combined with the 1.4 and the 2x teleconverters, which would give you a 1600 millimeter full frame equivalent. Pretty cool, huh? Now, also in gear news this week, Fuji released a new promotional video and a landing page for an 8-year-old lens, and Fuji users were not happy. Fuji published the tribute to its beloved 35mm f1.4 lens and quickly learned that new photographers don't really care about quality optics unless they're brand new and they cost more money. And in the can't catch a break category for the week, Canon proved that it's a good thing they make cameras and not computer technology. After recently losing many of its users' photos from its cloud hosting platform, Image.Canon, this week they were hacked for ransom in an event that took down many of the company's websites. Authorities are blaming the breach on overheating. And, oh heck, while I'm on a Canon run, Canon has announced that it will begin charging zombie photographers extra. releasing two versions of their new 85mm f1.2 lens. The RF version comes in at a mere $2,599. But for those zombies who insist on having as much bokeh as possible in every shot, there is the DS version. DS stands for Defocus Smoothing. You can pick up this bokeh maker for a solid $2,999. Add to that the $3,899 for the EOS R5, and that means that you can spend almost $7,000 for a portrait camera and lens combo that will let you make the same kind of background blur as your smartphone. And that about sums up the photo gear news for the week. Two quick announcements for you though this week. If you haven't signed up already, I have a free live online interactive presentation coming up tomorrow evening. It's called Exposure. What is correct exposure? Now, you may think you understand exposure, but let me just tell you, if you think that the exposure triangle is a key part of exposure, you're so wrong, and you don't really understand exposure in the digital era at all. Also coming up, shoot prep next week, how to plan a great shoot. That's August 11th. And the psychology and techniques behind photographing beauty will be held on August 18th. I'm going to go ahead and drop that main link here in the chat window for you guys. And make sure you sign up for my email newsletter so that you are notified as new classes, new dates are added. Okay, enough fun. Let's get into tonight's questions. How can I help you improve your photography? I see there's a couple good questions coming in. I have a few questions that came in from my Facebook group earlier, which, by the way, if you're not a member of my groups, come on. If you're a people shooter like me, you should join the I Shoot People group. And for general topics, join the TOG Knowledge group. The links, they're in the description right below the video, okay? All right, so the first question that I had tonight, and it's a gear question. And I know I said in the beginning, no gear questions, right? But this is from a member of my group, so I'm going to make an exception, and it's going to be a typical Joe answer. You ready? So the question comes from January Williamson, and her question is, I have a Canon Rebel T7i. I've got a pretty good range of glass for it right now, but of course, I want more. I'm thinking of getting the new R6 when it comes out, but I'm also thinking of upgrading to a better DSLR instead of going mirrorless right now. What do you suggest? Should I splurge and get the R6 with the L series 24-105, or save a little and just upgrade my camera body to a better DSLR? I can see benefits in both. Well, January, so here's the thing. Fortunately, I am glad that you are kind of acknowledging you may be having a little bit of gas here, because this is definitely kind of a gas question. Here's the challenge that I'm not hearing in your question, and this would be my concern with some of what you're considering. I'm not hearing that you need to upgrade. Now, I can totally understand how if you are serious about your photography and you're improving your skill set, that you would want to look to upgrade from a T7i. I completely understand that, and that makes sense. The fact that you have a fair amount of glass for it already certainly is a good reason for considering sticking with DSLRs. So I'm not going to give you a direct answer, but I'm going to give you some things to think about that I would suggest are maybe kind of the way you should prioritize your thought process and then certainly make up your own mind. So number one, with regards to the DSLR concept. So just the choice between DSLR and mirrorless, leaving all other aspects of your situation out of the conversation. I would say absolutely look at mirrorless, period. Make the move as soon as you possibly can. As far as I'm concerned, mirrorless makes sense. Mirrorless is the future. And from experience, there is nothing that compares to working with an EVF. That's the electronic viewfinder where basically you're seeing a finished image in the viewfinder. Can't beat that, period. Beyond that, DSLRs for the average shooter, and I don't hear you telling me that you have any advanced specialized needs for your cameras, DSLRs hold nothing over a mirrorless if we're making, a basic comparison. Now, the dilemma that you have is you have a lot of glass. So if you make that switch, you're going to be faced with either having to replace your glass, hence with the one lens you're looking at, or working with adapters. I personally hate adapters. I don't care if it's the new adapters that Nikon's making, which are made by Nikon, the new adapters that Canon is making. I'm just not a fan of adapters, period. Okay? So all that being said, here's what I would recommend. There clearly are some concerns over the operation of the new Canon cameras. Now, honestly, like is often the case, and that's why I kind of make fun of some of this camera news in the beginning of TOGCHAT, I think that those concerns are somewhat overblown unless you have very specific video needs, etc., for your shooting. But for stills, for all intents and purposes, it sounds like it's actually a really great camera that they've come up with. But if I were you, I would be patient a little bit longer. I would wait for the camera to be released, get it on the street, and then I would do one of two things. I would either rent it first so that you can actually use it, try it out to see if it's worth going through all that headache of having to switch over all of your glass, even if you're going to start with an adapter. And or if you can't rent it, I would go to your local camera retailer and try it out, borrow it for an afternoon from them, even if you have to just walk around the store, take a digital card with you, put the card in, and shoot pictures around the store, get a feel for the camera, etc. It is going to feel a lot different than your T7i. So regardless, you want to handle that camera. Do not buy that camera based on some YouTuber's recommendation. Don't buy it based on YouTube videos that you see. Don't buy it based on anything that you see on the internet. Go touch it, go handle it, go shoot with it. That would be my recommendation, okay? All right, the next question I got here comes from E.G. Brown. What is the best method to keep a model in focus from head to toe when shooting on location at an aperture of f1.8 or so? I am shooting with a Canon 80D 50mm f1.4 lens 6 to 7 feet away from the model and using off-camera flash and high-speed sync. Well, EJ, look, I got to be honest with you. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but right out of the box, you kind of sound like you've been bitten by the zombie bug there, right? Because that's like all zombie specs. It just is. You're doing off-camera flash, high-speed sync, outside. Well, I'm making an assumption it's outside. So if I'm wrong there, then I'm completely a jerk. But I have a feeling these are outside shots. So you're trying to overpower the sun, yada, yada, yada. It's like so yesterday. Like literally that whole concept is like circa 2016, okay? But if that's what you're trying to do, I would recommend, number one, don't shoot at 1.8. Like, why do you shoot at 1.8? Especially if you're using high-speed sync to kind of overpower the sun. I find that so many photographers, and this is not just a poke at you, EG, this is a poke at so many of these photographers, including these people that are going to go out and buy that $3,000 defocus lens from Canon, okay? Just because you can shoot and blur the crap out of your background doesn't mean that you don't have to pay attention to the backgrounds. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't pay attention to the backgrounds. So, unfortunately, the reality of it is I find, honestly, I'm not kidding, probably about 90% of the images that I see on the internet that are done, 1.8, 2.0, 1.4, whatever, wide open, the bokeh that's there is not actually adding anything to the shot. In fact, often it's a distraction. So the first way that you solve the keep the model in focus from head to toe situation is stop your lens down just a tad. Take a simple depth of field calculator, right? And look at what aperture you need to be able to get your subject in focus with that lens. And you're going to find it's not like you've got to stop down to f16. But, you may need to shoot at like f2.8. That's not that big a difference in the bokeh in your shot. It's just not, especially not with a 50. Remember, folks, you're shooting with a 50mm lens. Now, I believe the 80D is an APS-C, so even then, that's a 75mm equivalent, but the bokeh doesn't change, right? It's still a 50mm lens worth of bokeh, okay? So you're not picking up that much in that one stop. So that's the first thing I would do, is simply stop your lens down, right? I know that there are certain YouTube photographers who have made the statements along the lines of, why would you buy an f1.8 lens and shoot at any aperture other than f1.8? That's ridiculous. No, I'm sorry, they're morons. That's not how photography works. That's not how you buy your lenses. You just don't, okay? So stop down a little bit. The other thing is, very simply, number one, make sure that you are not tilting your camera. So the most common thing that I find happens with photographers who shoot models, especially when they are new to the game of shooting models. You have a 5'4" photographer and you have a 5'10", a 5'10" photographer and a 5'4" model. Let's try it that way, right? Okay. And the photographer has a medical malady that I refer to, and actually in all fairness, my fellow Olympus ambassador, Jamie McDonald, who's one of the Olympus educators, he came up with this. I can't take credit for this, but it's a physical malady of sorts. It's called AEL, always eye level syndrome, right? So 5'10" photographer, 5'4" model. If the photographer does not bend his knees or change his altitude, simple physics here, folks. This is not photography now. This is physics. He has to tilt the camera down to get all of the model's body in, which means that if you focus on the eyes, notice I'm tilting the camera. So the camera lens, the front of the camera lens, is closer to the model's eyes than it is the model's feet, right? So I have just made it a little more challenging to keep everything in focus. So the easy solution to that is, here's my 5'4" model. I'm the 5'10" photographer. I've just got to get down on my knees so that I am shooting with my camera at the midpoint of the model's body. Remember, these are full-length pictures we're talking about, folks, right? At the midpoint of the model's body. Now, my sensor and my lens are parallel to my model, okay? So that's the solution, right? So that being said, e.g., those are the two things that I would try, honestly. And then truly, I would make sure that you're not getting too comfortable or getting too far down the path of, you know, are you trying to do kind of the same stuff that everybody else is doing? Make sure that you're, make sure that you're being creative, okay? So, all right. Next question. I see a couple people talking about having sync issues. Sorry, gang. Everything here is showing as synced. It's the same settings that I use every week. So obviously, you're just going to have to deal with it for right now because I will have to check it out later. It's not like there's a whole lot to watch here. So, just worry about this part. All right. Questions that came in the chat. Oh, yeah, I saw a couple good ones go by here. So from Beverly, what lens do you use to shoot wedding rings if you don't have a macro lens? Beverly, the honest answer is whatever lens you have. Now, I realize that's not going to help you, but so here's the thing. First of all, based on your question, right, you are clearly trying to do a zombie shot. I'm going to get to use that word a lot tonight, I think, but I'm going to hold you guys accountable, right? Zombie shot meaning the same kind of picture that everybody else is doing, right? Like putting the ring in the middle of a book so that you get the light coming through and it creates the heart shot. It's been done like a bazillion times, right? So there's a couple ways. Number one, depending on the format of camera. So the challenge, Beverly, and if you're still here, start typing. I don't know what brand camera you have, especially specific. It doesn't even have to be a brand, but I don't know if you're shooting full frame APS-C, if you're shooting micro four thirds, and I don't know what lenses you have available. But a lot of times for a shot like that, which doesn't actually require a macro lens, you could do it with a 50mm if your particular 50mm allows you to focus relatively close. Also, you could do it with a telephoto zoom lens. If your telephoto zoom lens either allows you to focus close and or zoom in close. Perfect example. Now, again, I'm a micro four thirds shooter, but with my Olympus lenses, the 12 to 100, even the 40 to 150, and even a 300mm. Olympus shooters all know that you can pretty much turn all three of those lenses into like a macro lens and shoot at a distance. Part of the reason for that is that those lenses will focus at a very, 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 very close distance. Okay, so that's the option you have there. But if you can give me a little bit more detail on what lenses you have, I can give you some suggestions. And we'll take it from there. Okay, so Let's see, from photo, is it base? I'm sorry. I have the Sony 90mm f2.8 lens, and I have it for product photography, but it really is also great for portrait photography. It's also fastened on a Sony a7 III. At 90mm is a great focal length for portraiture. Even as a micro four thirds shooter, I shoot primarily with the 45mm f1.2 Pro lens, which is a 90mm full frame equivalent. So when you guys that have been following me for a while, you may remember back in the days when I was a Nikon shooter and shot full frame, my go-to lens was actually not a Nikon lens. Nikon lenses were great, but it was a Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro lens. Loved that lens. Sharpest full frame lens I ever used. It was absolutely awesome. Okay. All right. Next up here, Brett Sales. This is the first time you've seen one of my videos. Where the heck have you been, man? Anyway, the whole zombie thing. Yeah, so I've actually done videos about the zombie thing. I talk about it a lot. And hey, look, just to put the disclaimer in, some people get really upset at me. Every time I talk about it, I'll get at least one person who's like, you're really being very mean to people. Look, it's pushback, folks. It's pushback to say, hey, doing what everybody else is doing for the sake of learning is actually a great idea, right? The reason being, there's lots of information out there and lots of other resources that you can go to figure out how to do it. But when you just stop there and that becomes your thing, there's no pride, there's nothing great, and honestly, there's nothing creative about doing that. It immediately becomes very boring because it's just a copy. Copies are never as good as the original. So the challenge is, you gotta do your own thing to stand out. And again, as you follow me, Brett, which hopefully you will, I talk a lot about a lot of the really basic and simple things that I do to try and make my work different, because I'm not the greatest photographer in the world, and I'm never going to be. That is not a statement of modesty. It's just being honest with myself, okay? So the challenge is, in order to make yourself stand out, sometimes you actually have to work at that, and you got to work hard at that. And one of the easiest ways to do that is not do what everybody else is doing, right? That's the key. So, all right, and we got somebody else in here that's, okay, so a couple of things. Gang, do me a favor. Like, seriously, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm here to help you, and all I'm reading is, it's out of sync, it's out of sync, it's out of sync. What would you like me to do? Seriously, somebody tell me what you'd like me to do. Would you like me to stop, start the feed over again? Maybe I'll see if I can troubleshoot it, but I'm telling you right now, I'm using the same settings I've used for the last 10 weeks, okay? So there's a problem. I got it. Am I that interesting that it's ruining your night that you can't see my face? If you keep to photography in the chat, I can see your questions. I don't miss any of them. And we all learn more. So come on, gang. Right? It only takes one person saying try refreshing. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's wake up, right? Seriously. So honestly, look, if you got a problem with that, check out. Go ahead. Leave. But come on, right? Why are we here? Because if you're here to be entertained, I don't want you here. That's not my mission. You know that. If you're here to learn, man, let's focus on the learning. But everybody typing about the sync being off, it's off. I'm sorry. Okay? Keep it real. So here we go. Scrolling back up. And let's see, from Kevin. Joe, I bought a Godox 860 II2. I don't really remember exactly which the model numbers are there. I want to use it to aid my OMD10 for low light pics and outdoors. For non-creative choices, do you have any suggestions for learning to use flash besides taking lots of pics? It's interesting that you phrase it that way, Kevin. So actually, a couple of things. Number one, I would say to you that the first thing I would recommend is do take lots of pics, right? Because honestly, that is really the way to go. But what I would do is basically kind of give yourself some, shall we say, categories. What I mean by categories is start out with the idea that, okay, I want to work on like bounce flash, and then just practice and shoot with bounce flash for quite a while until you feel you've mastered that. Then take the idea to say, well, I want to work with direct flash with on-camera flash and see what I can do and see what kind of problems it gives me. And then say, okay, I maybe want to add to that flash a trigger and take that flash off camera and work with it that way. So, I mean, honestly, that would be my recommendation. I will tell you this much also, Kevin. I want to just pop your question back up here on the screen as a reminder. Since you're talking about specifically working in the low light scenario, one of the challenges that you run into in low light, and when I say challenge, it's both a technical challenge, but it's also a creative challenge, okay, is that since you're using one flash, you've kind of got to make the decision, do I want to let my background go dark? In other words, light that subject and that's it, and you're basically kind of eliminating the background because it's dark. Or do you want to take advantage of the low light that's there, which I get it, there's not a lot of light, but there's some ambient light. Do you want to take advantage of that and use the flash to kind of blend the two together so that you are, kind of creating a balance? That's a big one to practice. If your goal, so I'll give you a little starter tip. If your goal is to be able to kind of blend the ambient light and the flash, and that doesn't mean that they have to be equal, but I'm talking about the idea that you don't want the background to just go black, right? Probably the easiest thing for you to do as a starting point is, number one, take a meter reading. And when I say meter reading, get a test shot where you like the brightness of the background. So maybe you want it a little dark, maybe you want it kind of, even, etc. So figure out your background settings. Then once you've done that, turn the flash on. And what you're going to do then is adjust the power of the flash until it gives you the exposure you want. So in other words, let's say you wind up at f4 and you look at this shot and the background, the room, it's maybe a half a stop to a stop underexposed, and you like that. Perfect. So now you know you've got to adjust that flash to f4 worth of light in order to shoot. And actually the same goes when you're doing, inside and outside, or excuse me, doing outside stuff, is basically set your ambient light first and then go ahead and adjust your flash power to match whatever you have decided for exposure on your ambient. So hopefully that'll help. Okay. All right. Let's see here. So we are scrolling on back here. And there's the flash one. From Carl, I'm shooting a person on a speed bag. I was watching your video on shutter drag. Would this be the best way to show movement as she is hitting the bag? I wouldn't say best, Carl. And Carl, I'm not a big fan of that best as if, it's like the only way to do it kind of thing. I would say that it's definitely one way that you could do it. So if you're using the shutter drag technique, and for those of you that may not be familiar with shutter drag, let me see if I can grab that video really quick and I will share it for you guys here so that you can see it. So the video Carl's talking about is this one right here. I'm going to copy the link address and I will share that with you guys in the chat window there. So if you're going to use the shutter drag effect, you just want to be careful to make sure that you're setting your light so that as your subject is punching towards the bag, the drag is behind, not in front, okay? And I'm not even going to get into the, do we play around with rear curtain, front curtain, all that kind of stuff. Just leave it on rear curtain sync and just set your lights appropriately. But if your goal, Carl, is to, oh, Kevin, thank you so much for the super chat, man. If your goal, Carl, is to be able to see movement and see motion, you might actually try shooting it without flash. I mean, I don't know what lighting equipment you have available to you, but if you're able you know, you might consider actually not using a flash, working with um, um, constant lighting and experimenting that way. So, I mean, kind of a lot of different ways you could approach it. But yeah, your idea shutter drag would work. Um, do understand that if you're going to do that type of a technique where you want the blur, you're not going to nail that in 2 or 3 frames. You're going to need a lot of frames, and each frame is a piece of choreography. So each frame, you're taking that shot and then you're looking at it, and then you're solving some problems, tweaking. Do another frame, look at that, okay, tweak it a little bit more. Another frame, tweak it a little bit more, right? When you get into that kind of a technique, and you'll see even when you watch that video, you know, it's a very random process. So when you're trying to do something that's very specific, like that punch being thrown, it's got to be choreography, which means it's also very important that your subject is, you know, not moving their feet in between shots, that they're starting in the same spot, that they're hitting the exact same target on the bag. You want to break that thing down and choreograph it so that you can get your composition and everything just right. That's definitely it. And another video that you guys could watch that is a similar description of what I'm talking about, but it's not going to solve the punching or the boxing shot, but to give you an better understanding of what I'm talking about in terms of choreographing the shot, this video on how to do a hair flip, I would encourage you to take a look at this, because I really kind of go through in this video the breakdown of how you kind of choreograph more challenging movements. In the case of that video, it's with hair flips. And we talk about how we kind of work out all the details so that as she's flipping her hair, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know exactly where the hair is going to go. She's doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we're doing little tweaks in between. And that's how we get it to the point where we get the shot that we want. So do configure that, or do consider that element of it. Okay. All right, let's see here, and scroll back to some good ones. We got time for more questions, gang. I know I got a couple left in here, but April, haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Hope all is well. Let's see here. Donald, Yakima. Really? Yakima? Okay. I'll learn. Sorry. Let's see, from Roger Dad. What is the best way to find a makeup artist for portrait sessions? Well, Roger, there's this thing called Google. Sorry, man. Or there's this guy called Joe Edelman. You may have heard of him. He's on YouTube. You should check him out. Some people think he's kind of good. But anyway, on his website, so here, let me switch over. Can you tell I'm a little punchy tonight? Something to do with audio issues. I don't know. Anyway, Roger, this will help maybe give you a start, depending on where you're from. And if you're not in the United States, unfortunately, I'm about to waste your time. But if you're in the United States, go to my website, joeedelman.com, and up at the top of every single page where you see my mouse right now is this link called Resources for Models. Click on that one, and the middle one right here, Makeup Artist Directory. I'll share the direct link to it here. I have makeup artists listed in here from pretty much every state. So let me give you guys the standard disclaimer. It is on all the pages, but just so you know, I have not necessarily worked with every one of these makeup artists. I have, however, reviewed the work of any and every makeup artist that is listed in here. And based on their portfolio, they are someone that I would feel comfortable walking into a studio with and doing a shoot. The other thing that I will share with you, Roger, regardless of where you are in the world, because it sounds like you haven't actually done a lot of work with makeup artists or hairstylists yet, on my YouTube channel, and by the way, just so you guys know what I'm doing, I just go to the channel and I'm clicking the little magnifying glass. If you search up top, you're searching all of YouTube. So on the channel, I'm just going to type in makeup artist, and I have, whoops, and I'll fix the spelling. I have 2 videos, Roger, that if you're just starting out working with a makeup artist, I would encourage you, strongly encourage you to watch both of these videos. First one, what to know about working with a makeup artist for great portraits and modeling shots. And then the other one is you need a makeup artist for great portraits, headshots, and model shots. Both videos do contain very, very different information, but they will help you a lot in terms of finding a makeup artist, figuring out what makes a good makeup artist based on their pictures and the stuff that you see online, also how to communicate with them, all of those things. So make sure you watch those videos. They will definitely kind of help you feel like you're a little bit more prepared and a little bit more kind of in the driver's seat when you finally do get that makeup artist, into your studio and you're ready to shoot. Okay. All right, scrolling on back up here. Let's see. I think I might have a couple more, and then I saw Andrew just gave me a new question, so I will get down there. Neil Branch. Oh gosh, Neil. It's not your fault, man. His question is, Joe, could you please share your opinion on pro photo lights? Huge investment, but are they worth it? For a whole bunch of reasons, I kind of have to temper my statements here a little bit out of respect. And trust me, I'm not about to do any business with Pro Photo Gang. Don't worry, they would never have me. So here's what I'll tell you, Neil. In terms of quality, let's start there. Pro Photo are, I would argue, hands down, the best quality light. And when I say quality light, I don't mean construction, the physical piece. I mean the quality of the light, the output. Probably the best quality light that you can find in a strobe of any brand. 20 years ago, shooting film, that would have been an incredibly important issue. In fact, 20 years ago, shooting film, I had pro photos. In today's world, shooting raw digital with the color correction capabilities that we have in Photoshop, and given the fact that if you're following me, you're probably not shooting product work, you are probably shooting portraits and people and things like that. The work that we do is subjective in color. I think that there's an extremely good argument that that additional quality that you're getting from the Pro Photo lights, you have to question, is it worth the additional money that you're spending? If you, some other considerations. If you are a photographer that shoots routinely on location, I would, suggest the idea that you're going to spend that kind of money and that you're going to take the stuff out on location where it's going to get beat more and used more and banged around and things like that. If you're just using it in a studio, it's probably not going to take as much abuse. But for my money, Neil, I mean, the short answer is I shoot Godox, right? So there you go. There's nothing wrong with Pro Photos, but if you buy Pro Photos thinking you're going to be a better photographer because of it, yeah, no, that's like buying the latest, greatest camera because you think it's going to make you a better photographer. That's not going to be the case. So, Spinning Wheels Photography, did you get a chance to photograph the comet? No, but I saw a lot of really, really bad comet pictures. I'm not going to lie. I almost included that in my intro to TOGCHAT last week. Something snarky, but no, I'll hold up my hand in shame. I don't shoot that kind of stuff because I like going to bed on time and I like my sleep and all that kind of jazz. I don't have the patience. But I saw some really cool ones. I will say that. I think probably one of my favorites was actually by one of my, and I'm not saying this because it's an Olympus or an ambassador thing, swear to God, I'm not, but one of the favorite shots that I saw were by two of my fellow Olympus ambassadors. One was Olympus Visionary Ralph Lee Hopkins, and the other one was by an Olympus educator, Matt Seuss. Actually, that's not a lie. And the other one, there was three of them, was actually by Peter Baumgarten, who's also an Olympus Visionary. But yeah, I mean, there were a lot of cool shots out there. Unfortunately, there were just also a lot of really, really bad shots. Because it's kind of one of those things like, oh, I saw it. You see that blurry thing? That's the comet. That's another one of those. Not everybody will have the same experience with your photo as you do, right? One thing I learned through being an Olympus Visionary and having the opportunity to go out into the middle of desert in Tucson, Arizona, working with a camera that actually manages to focus on stars, Shooting the night sky, I mean, it's not something that you just, stick the camera there and take a picture. It's a skill set, just like anything else in photography. It's a skill set that you develop. So yeah, for me, I just don't have that skill set. So, let's see. All right, back to the beginning, and then I'll catch up down with the newer stuff here from Ron. Joe, do you have a preferred company to order prints and albums and things like that? So I don't print near as much as I should. For probably the last year and a half, I've done most of my own printing when I've needed it. I've got a nice big Epson P5000, but yeah, the bigger prints that I've had made, I use either Nations Photo Lab, which is in Maryland, state of Maryland, just outside of Baltimore. And I've also used Smug Mug for some things, and then I will also use, I've used White House Custom Color for some things. I don't do enough printing that I'm kind of like highly dedicated, in one direction. Oftentimes I hate to admit, for the occasional times that I'm going to send out a print to be made, and that's usually if I want it like mounted and that kind of stuff, I'm actually going to look around to a reputable lab that maybe has a deal going on or something like that, which I'm ashamed to admit that, but I'm being honest. I just don't have the time, which is a really horrible excuse, but it's my excuse. I just don't get to shoot near as much or print near as much as I would really, really like to. So, okay. All right. Let's see. From Neil, you've been stalking the Flashpoint Godox products too. Yeah, I mean, again, full disclosure on those. Godox is one of those, Chinese companies that came along, and it would appear, I don't know, so I'm choosing my words carefully because I don't want to libel a company, but it would appear as though they kind of copied or stole a bunch of technology. But unlike some of the companies, the Chinese companies that have clearly done that, Godox got really smart, and Godox put in the research and the effort, and there's still some argument that maybe they're, cheating along the way. I know Profoto has sued them, right? But Godox is putting out a line of strobes that are affordable. They're really decent quality. They are showing, based on the way they're designing these strobes, based on the way they're designing their transmitters, based on the way everything interacts, they're showing that they are taking the time to understand the photography industry, like Profoto does, right? So I have to admit, I kind of give them a pass because of that. So I realize that maybe makes me a hypocrite on my, whole thing about just stealing technology. But Godox has done a good job of it. They saved me a lot of money. I've traveled all over the country with Godox lights in Pelican cases, and they have held up tremendously well. My lights have been knocked over on stage. They've been kicked over at workshops. They've taken a beating, and I have not had one die on me yet. Full disclosure, I had one AD400 that died, but literally the first time I turned it on. So it went back, got a new one, done, problem solved. That kind of stuff happens to, any company, right? It wasn't like I used it for 6 months and it crapped out early. It went like first use, had to be sent back. So I don't hold that against them. So at the end of the day, I would say, yes, do your research, check out both brands. Profoto, awesome stuff. But I question as to whether or not most photographers at this point actually need to spend that kind of money. So, okay. Let's see. Todd, an interesting bit of trivia. Godox makes the high-speed sync trigger for Broncolor. It won't surprise me. I mean, at this point, I didn't know that. So thanks for sharing that. But at this point, I'm sure that Godox is, kind of behind the scenes doing a lot of stuff for a lot of different companies. That kind of wouldn't surprise me at all, to be honest. So, all right, let's see. Bob's Great TV, and then I'll get Andrew's question here. Joe, you talk about models, makeup artists, etc., that want to do TFP shoots with you, that you send them through a process for vetting. Do I have any material on this? Well, Bob, as a matter of fact, I do. And you can have it all too. Next Tuesday, as a matter of fact, all you got to do is sign up for this program right here, Shoot Prep, how to plan a great shoot. I'm going to share the link with you. It's next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time in the US. Give you guys a little tip here, if you cannot make that time for some reason, okay, all you have to do is sign up for the class presentation. About an hour to an hour and a half after the presentation, you will receive an email with a link that will allow you to download, to watch the presentation for the next 48 hours. And as part of that email that comes, you'll also be able to download all of the materials. You'll see it says right here, the downloads will include all of my shoot prep documents that I share with my subjects in advance of a shoot, as well as all of the email templates and even model release templates. And I will be discussing as a pretty substantial part of that presentation, essentially what my vetting process is. And that was totally not supposed to happen. So let's see if I can just fix that for a second. Bear with me. So this is Joe being a bozo here. I just completely there we go. I completely hit the wrong button. So anyway, I'll be sharing all of that information. And that's really the entire goal of that shoot prep presentation, is to help all of you, because I know I talk about it a lot and I talk about it in pieces. I've shared a lot of the information over the years, but this way it's kind of all concise in one spot all at once, and hopefully it will give you kind of a better roadmap of how you can go about avoiding some of those issues. Okay. All right, from Andrew. I'm having trouble getting my portrait subjects to feel comfortable in front of the camera. Do you have any tips on the basics so that their smile doesn't look like they are constipated? So, Andrew, wow, so tips. Well, I mean, the first thing I would say to you is this, Andrew. So this is the thing that most photographers don't want to hear. And that is that more often than not, when you have a portrait subject in front of your camera and they are looking really awkward and uncomfortable, it is because you are making them feel awkward and uncomfortable. Now, before you all start ready to throw something at me, slow down a second. Let me back up and let me explain that a little bit more. So understand that part of being a portrait photographer is the interaction with your subjects. It is the psychology aspect of being able to put your subjects at ease and make them comfortable. Andrew, I will tell you that in 2 weeks, I've got an online presentation coming up about the psychology and techniques behind photographing beauty. You might want to consider that one. But basically, first and foremost, I don't care how experienced or inexperienced you are. If you are even slightly off kilter when you've got a subject in front of you, not being confident, not feeling prepared, not being outgoing and happy and jovial. In other words, displaying the mood and the emotions that you want them to display, then you're making your job 10 times harder than it needs to be. Without getting into all of the cognitive science, okay, body language and emotion is something that we subconsciously reflect back. So for starters, when I'm speaking with my subjects, I'm not talking in a monotone, okay, so next we're going to do this and I want you to do that. If I'm looking to do a happy, smiley shot, first of all, I'm never going to say the word smile, but I am going to say, okay, so I want lots of energy for this. I want you to look right here, just a tiny little bit. Tilt your head for me. That is awesome. A little bit more excitement. That's great. Cool. And I'm basically giving them that energy that I want back. Even with my face is becoming very animated. My eyes are getting big. I'm smiling as I talk because they will instinctively mirror that. Now, certainly, when we're talking about nervous subjects, etc., some are more nervous than others. Some are tougher than others, yes. But I find the mistake that a lot of photographers make, Andrew, and this is what I would rather see you avoid, when they're first trying to learn this whole process of kind of negotiating the back and forth with a subject and putting them at ease, is they feel that they've got to have some tricks, some techniques. And a lot of other photographers, YouTube and elsewhere, teach all these techniques. Well, the fact of the matter is, the simple psychology teaches you that you don't actually need techniques. There's a couple things you do need, though. Number one, you need to understand that your subjects are not objects. Your subjects are people, just like you. Just like you're nervous or concerned, your subjects are nervous or concerned. Your subjects get up every day and deal with the same kind of stresses and problems in life that you do. Your subjects, just like you, want to look their best in their pictures. Your subjects, just like you, hate getting in front of the camera because they ultimately don't like the way they look. They want to look like somebody else. I mean, believe me, every time I go watch my YouTube videos, you have no idea how much it pisses me off that I don't see a George Clooney face looking back at me because I want that filter, right? Like I just do. So your subjects have these same kind of fears. The reason why I'm putting so much emphasis on that is photographers tend to forget that. And they make it all about the lighting and the camera and the pose and everything else. All that stuff is 20% of the process. 80% of it, it's the psychology. It's treat your subject the way you would want to be treated in that same situation. Understand that they have the same kind of concerns. And then give them what you're asking for them in return, right? Too many photographers will do the fiddle around in the equipment, fiddle around with the gear, and then they look up at the subject and say, okay, turn your shoulders a little bit. Great, smile. And then they hide behind a camera. And that's Brad Pitt is a really close number second, but I figure since Clooney's got a little bit more of the gray going on at my age, that's a safer bet. But otherwise, I'm with you on Brad Pitt, man. So anyway, so hopefully you see where I'm headed with this, Andrew. The key to it is don't learn a bunch of tricks, because then if you learn a bunch of tricks, and tips are tricks, they are really, then what you're trying to do basically is you're trying to trick your subject. Don't trick your subject. Show compassion, be sincere, and then give your subject what you want back. Because here's the thing, and I do this with models. You know, if I'm telling a model, hey, I want you to throw your arms out really big. Well, especially, a young girl, she's a little bit nervous. She's going to be like, she's going to look like T-Rex all of a sudden, right? And even though I want this, right? But if I'm standing there and I say, okay, so I want you to throw your arms out and really happy and a whole bit, and I'm doing it, looking like an idiot, but doing it, well, then it's really hard, number one, for her to say, I can't do that, T-Rex, right? Okay. And number two, I'm showing you really exactly what I want. Because otherwise it's kind of like, okay, smile. How much? I don't like big smiles, right? So you gotta give it to them back. Be what you want your subject to be and maintain that. And you'll find that the process will become a lot easier. So that's where you start. Honestly, that's where you start. And a really good example, and I'm not dumping on anybody here, but about a year or two ago, probably 2 years ago, Peter Hurley, Mr. Headshot, right? Peter Hurley came out with an iPhone app called Hurleyisms, which on one hand, it was brilliant because it's here's all the things that Peter Hurley says, like shebang and squinch and hold the hoagie and, all that stuff, right? But here's the reality, right? If you've never met Peter Hurley, the guy's 6'5", 6'6". He's got this booming voice. So he walks into a room, everybody knows Peter Hurley's there, right? Here's a guy like me, 5'8", not Peter Hurley, right? So if I start using Peter Hurley's shtick, my subjects are going to look at me like, what are you, nuts? It's not going to work, okay? So that's the kind of the problem. It's the tricks, there are no tricks, right? Even the hold the hoagie thing, right? Holding the hoagie and squinch, I'm sorry, but for portrait work, Dumbest thing ever. Sorry. I know a lot of people will be like, here's my point. You got to understand, Peter Hurley is amazing at what he does. Amazing. But how does he make his money? Aside from, teaching and running headshot crew, how does he make his money? By shooting actors and actresses. People who are trained and skilled at offering emotion and characters. That's not your average portrait subject that most of you are dealing with. So, telling your average portrait subject, okay, squint, pull those eyebrows down just a little bit so you look like you're trying to think about something, like, okay? Or, doing hold a hoagie. Okay, so I want you to stand and pretend like you're holding a hoagie. What person? I mean, I defy all of you. If you don't have something in your hands right now, sit there and do the hold the hoagie thing and tell me you don't feel as awkward as you could possibly feel, right? And so you're going to tell the average person to do that? No, it doesn't work. Okay. Andrew just typed back, thanks. I have a tendency to pay too much attention to settings and not to subject. And Andrew, very common beginner's problem. Very common. So don't beat yourself up on it. In fact, it's really good, especially since you're still a young guy. It's very good that you're aware that you're having that problem because you can work to resolve that. One of the best ways to get past that, set your tech in advance. Make sure your tech is set before your subject gets there. That way, when your subject's ready, you're ready, and you can roll into the shoot. And even if you're going to do a lot of experimenting, even if you're going to play around and try a lot of different things, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you get to a point later in the shoot where you could say to the subject, man, this stuff is awesome. It looks great. But you know what? I've got this crazy idea. It's going to take me a couple minutes to set it up, and I got to experiment a little bit. But are you game? Now, when they say, of course, like, oh my God, yeah, that'd be cool. Well, at this point, you have now given yourself permission to bury your head in your gear and play around and to, do a test shot and be like, oh, crap, But you don't want to come on the set for your first shot, whether it's a makeup artist or not. You don't want to, come on the set for your first shot and do your first test shot and be the photographer that's like, click, look, oh, crap. Yeah, that's not a good way to get a shoot started, right? So the best thing that anybody can do is set your first shot well in advance. And then, Robert, who's George Clooney? Google, man. Set your first shot in advance. That way you pick up the camera and you're shooting and your subject's hearing the best thing your subject can hear. Because trust me, gang, I don't care if it's a model or a portrait subject. I don't care if it's male or female. Your subjects don't really want to hear, oh yeah, oh good, oh yeah, that's great. Oh, baby, that's hot. No, that is not what they want to hear. They want to hear one thing, just one thing. And they want to hear it multiple times over. They want to hear click, 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 click. Click is the affirmation that things look good enough to photograph. Done. That's the best feedback. Yeah, every now and then, a little bit of, you're doing great. This is awesome. This is amazing. And even when you do that, it's always a great idea after you say, my God, you're doing great. You feeling okay? Like, trust me, it works, okay? But yeah, put yourself in your subject's shoes, focus there, make sure your tech is prepped early, and it makes things a whole lot easier. So, Soren Man, Dave here, should I use CAF, sorry, let me try that one more time. Should I use CAF or CAF plus TR for BIF and sports on my EM1, EM1 Mark III. Any other settings to recommend? Pro capture would be useful, I'm guessing. New 1 to 400 lens will be ordered soon. Okay, so first of all, I would actually just stick with the CAF. I really would. The CAF for tracking is only good when they're like going at you. Across your frame, not at you. So it's actually a little bit limited. But even pro capture, it depends on your subject. You're going to find most sports shooters don't use pro capture. You're taking, depending on where you're at with your learning curve, Dave, the problem with pro capture is you're taking all the learning curve out, so you're not going to improve your skills at all, and you're going to actually, you're still hoping that the computer is going to grab the shot for you. The Olympus Pro Capture is amazing, but it still doesn't replace skill. No camera replaces skill. It just doesn't. So I would work with the CAF, period. Start there. Okay. I will tell you, Dave, that if you visit getolympus.com and go to the Learning Center, like for instance, if you're going to shoot birds, whatever, sports, most of the Olympus visionaries, myself included, have written articles where we talk about, our settings and how we have the cameras configured and that kind of stuff. So, I would encourage you to go check that out. Okay. All right. Let's see here. And White Lion. Joe, what is recommended if outdoor on location shoot is planned, but then it's a rainy day? Rescheduled. I mean, if your shoot needs to be outdoors, if that's the concept and that's the idea, then I would honestly say, reschedule it. If it's something where you can go ahead and move to inside and still do the same kind of things, then I would say, okay, sure. But I think for me, I would want to reschedule. Okay. All right. Let's see what do we got here. Todd. And we'll make this our last one. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm still running late, of course. Quick question, Joe. I'm borrowing an EM1 Mark III, and I can't find the live composite mode. Off the top of your head, can you tell me which menu it's in? It's right up on the top of the camera. Just click the B, and you'll be right there. Or if you go into the menu, I believe without the camera in front of me, and my gear is all downstairs tonight, but you'll find it in the second camera menu. But just hit the B setting up top, and you're right there. They actually made it much easier to access on the EM1 Mark III than they did on the EM1 Mark II. Okay. So hope that helps. And let's see here. I think, one more here, Tommy. This came in earlier. Do you ever send thank you notes or gift to your clients after a shoot? I shoot a lot of business owners, and I was thinking dropping off a 4x5 portrait and a nice but inexpensive frame. Yeah, it's actually a great idea. Not enough of that is done. I mean, for me, at this point in my career, Tommy, I don't do a lot of that, but have I done things like that in the past? Absolutely. I mean, big enough clients, I've sent bottles of wine and gift baskets, right? Photography is a relationship business when you're photographing people, period, right? So whether you're doing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be photographing people. You could be photographing products for a company. Don't think that the relationship aspect of your business isn't important, because it is. So being in business as a photographer, let's phrase it that way, it's a relationship business. So yeah, I would say that anything like that, if you can afford it, is actually great idea, great plan. Okay? All right, gang. As always, thank you. For those of you having latency issues, 10 people say there's a problem, 10 people said there wasn't. I'll look into it, but everything on my end is set like it's been set. So I apologize, but other than that, gang, you know the drill. Go pick up the cameras, take lots of pictures. Have a great week. Stay safe.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TOGCHAT. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.